The man with the maroon suit in the park. I'm a student, but what college and what I'm studying isn't important. What is important is that I always own Windows computers, and the school uses Macs for our projects. Transferring files between them was a nightmare, so I stayed at the school to finish anything due. I took the buses home every day and fairly late. My school wasn't very far away from my place. I was always so tired from cramming to finish projects before the deadline. I took the bus home, and the passes were included in our tuition, so why not use it as often as possible? On the way back, one night, I was nodding off to sleep. The driver's bad habit of stopping suddenly was the only thing keeping me awake. My head snapped forward when the bus stopped. At first, I wasn't sure where I was. We stopped in front of a park. The driver often paused to take 5-minute breaks at this stop because I was the only one left riding on the bus. I knew I would drift back off to sleep if we didn't start moving soon. I almost did. Glancing out the window, I noticed something that got enough of my attention to stay awake. A man was just walking under a light and into a park. For a split second I saw his face, but I couldn't remember what it looked like. My body reacted in flight mode after seeing it. I was wide awake, feeling like I should start running. Muscles tense. I started hoping he looked back towards me. I burned the rest of his image in my mind due to how the smallest hint of seeing his face screamed danger. He looked normal, tall and thin, and dressed in a maroon suit. Alright, maybe that color of suit wasn't at all normal. I'd seen weirder outfits on students in my class, and there were some bars in the area. It wasn't unreasonable that he wore his nice suit out onto a date. I could explain his fashion sense, but not why my body reacted in the way it did, only looking at him. The bus started back up again, and I was left to wonder what was that all about for another day. While I was working on my newest project, I kept getting distracted thinking about the man in the park. I wanted to remember his face just as much as I didn't. I knew unless I got this settled, I would never be able to focus. The path through the park was faster than the bus. I always stayed on the bus instead of cutting through because I was too lazy to walk. The next night, I got off the bus in front of the park, my driver paying no attention. It was foolish thought thinking that the odd man would be back a second time. And I haven't heard great things about the park. A lot of muggings lately, so all of my female friends refused to walk through it at night. Dangerous, but I still needed to know who that man was. I walked through at a brisk pace while looking around me. I kept my phone in my hands in case I did get into trouble. When I came across someone on the pathway, I eyed him wary. When he spotted me and took a few steps in my direction, I almost called the cops. Relief flooded me when his jacket was labeled with security. "Hey, can I walk you through?" He offered and stopped a few steps in front of me, in case I was still a bit untrusting. "Parks have security now?" I asked, eyebrows raised. He let out a chuckle at my question. "Yeah, the city hired my company a few weeks ago. There has been attacks with not enough officers to patrol. Until they get settled, they wanted someone to scare away the muggers and get the drunks to the other side safe." That did make some sense. A few cops just retired out of leaving so many spots to fill. I heard about the issue but never about how it would affect the city on a whole. "I'm Garrett. You don't need to walk with me if you feel uncomfortable. Just thought I would offer. I can take down anyone who tries to hurt you, but can't arrest them," he explained. Since he seemed like a nice enough guy, I took him up in his offer. I couldn't ask him about the odd man I'd seen before, so I let him talk about his job for a few minutes until I was out of the park. I thought if we spoke enough, the topic would come up naturally. It didn't by the time I was on the other side. I thanked him, requesting if he was going to be on the same shift tomorrow. He was. At least now there was someone to watch over me as I went on this goose chase of mine. In the next week, I took my path through the park with Garrett beside me. He kept warning me to stay on the bus, but I could also tell he wanted to chat with someone. It was a boring job after all. I didn't have class on the weekend, so I didn't see him for 2 days. The following Monday, I was a little shocked at what I saw when we met at the usual time. Garrett was a tall, built man. He needed to be for his line of work. He said he was in the military due to a leg injury, but he needed to retire early. So it was a surprise to see him with a busted lip and black eye. "Garrett, are you alright?" I asked my new friend. "Yeah, it's nothing. Just some kids getting rowdy over the weekend. Needed to break it up. They scattered, but I feel like they're bad news. It's better if you stay out of the park for a few days, you hear?" I nodded, feeling a little upset that he got roughed up. Must have been just a bunch of people to do it. My quest of trying to find a stranger should not put me in danger. For all I knew, I dreamt that man with a strange face. We walked and talked. Garrett happy there was someone to listen to him speak after 2 days of being alone. "You'll stay away for a little bit, right?" he asked when we reached the other side of the park. "Yeah, for a few days, but you better be here when I get back," I warned. He gave me another smile and we went our separate ways. I fully planned on staying on the bus instead of cutting through for a while, and I did that for just 2 days. On the third, I was idling on the bus, waiting for it to get going, when I saw something going on the entrance of the park. A group of high school students were cheering and walking into the start of the trail. It was nothing out of the ordinary. That was until I noticed some carried baseball bats. It took my mind a few minutes to register that they were not just coming home from practice. By the time I did, the bus had started to drive again. I rushed to the front of the bus begging it to stop. The driver looked annoyed until I explained my theory. He agreed to call the police for me due to how worried I looked. The city buses always opened the doors, and when they stopped, the driver didn't have time to stop me from running out of the door and towards the park. It wasn't the wisest idea. I could feel as if I can find Garrett before those kids. I wasn't about to leave behind my first real friend. My entire life, I kept my head down, not speaking much. I just found someone who liked a person that listened. I wasn't gonna let anything happen to him. I ran in the dark, chest hurting from not even doing a light jog in years. I heard the sounds of the kids cheering each other on as I prayed it wasn't too late. I almost ran right into them. They all stood in a circle, already finding my friend. He was tough, but against a pack of teens with weapons, I could tell a few of them were on the receiving end of his punches before they overpowered the single park security guard. I felt sick when I heard the bat crack against something. I didn't think I took so long finding them, and yet I was far too late. A boiling rage I'd never felt before took over me. I stepped away from the group before anyone noticed me. "Hey, shitbags! The cops are on the way, so you better fuck off!" I was a small college student. I may have had a few years on these kids, but every single one of them were taller and stronger than me. Some turned their heads and laughed at my poor attempt at being intimidating. "Oh? Then we better finish this up soon." One near the middle replied with a horrible laugh. He raised the bat to bring it down on my friend hidden between them all. I stood, mouth unable to do anything. I couldn't even let out a scream to help my friend. By some miracle he stopped. All of them did. Confusion plastered over their faces as they looked towards me. No, behind me. "Who the hell?" One of the teens started but stopped as his voice trailed off into a choking sound. I didn't turn around to see what they were looking at. I watched all of their faces turn from confused to pure horror. Faces pale, some gagged and others choked. Their weapons clattering to the ground as each of their mental states degrading in front of me. A few stood completely silent and wide-eyed, as blood started to come from their nose. As they collapsed to the ground, I could see Garrett curled up, protecting his head. I wasn't sure how badly he was hurt. I wanted to go over to him, but first I needed to know what was behind me. I turned to face the man in the suit that led me into the park to start with. He stood under a light and a step away from me. If he had eyes, he would be looking down at me. Instead of a face was nothing, and just a void of black. At first it was a simple void, And then the longer I looked at it, I started to see shapes shifting and twisting. Shapes no other word has ever been created to describe. My head pounded, but I could not look away. I've never been so scared before in my life. I don't know how my heart didn't stop right then and there. The world shifted around me to make it feel like I was no longer standing still, as if everything was shaking and yet not at the same time. Out from the void, those colors and shapes were not meant for human eyes came towards me endlessly. I was vaguely away from my own nose bleeding and my fingers twitching from the horror that should not be part of this world. Time had no meaning as that void had nothing, and yet everything stretched out before me. I looked for so long. I saw something I should have not seen. A hint of this creature's real face. The smallest glance of that face made my heart skip a beat, and I snapped out of the trance of the void that brought me into. My head hurt, and my nose was bleeding still. But besides from that, I was fine compared to the teens behind me. The man had his hands in his pocket when I started to dab my nose on my sleeve. He reached out for me. Without being able to stop myself, I reached out and took his hand. The shapes and colors still swirled around the void of a face, making me dizzy, but I could stand it. I was feeling a stronger emotion than fear. I was scared out of my wits, but lightheaded from a sudden fluttering in my stomach. "Are you single?" I wanted to scream. All movement around the void stopped. The man looked stiff and somehow without a face, embarrassed. I could not believe I just asked out a nightmare creature. What was wrong with me? No, really, what was wrong with my brain? Until that point in my life, I never experienced any sort of romantic love towards anyone. My mother always said I just needed to meet the right person. I fully accepted living alone. I didn't mind it. I was perfectly content with doing my own thing until that moment. I wanted Garrett to be alright and to meet my friends, and I desperately wanted to date this monster. He moved his head so he was looking at the group of traumatized teens and then back at me. "Seriously?" the man without a face asked. His voice sounded like clips of other voices making up a word. I felt my face flush as I nodded. Who knew being scared to death and love at first sight can happen at the same time? I mean, I know it's sudden, and it's fine if you aren't. I'm okay with being friends and just hanging out and getting to know you. So, I'm just gonna get my friend to the hospital. How about you think about it, and I'll see you tomorrow night? I wanted to die for a few different reasons. I let go of the faceless man's hand to go over to my other friends. The man looked at his hand, trying to figure out what just happened. Garrett was already waking up, trying to move. I told him to stay put and I called for help. When I looked back, the faceless man was gone. Garrett would be in the hospital for a bit, but he was alive. He kept thanking for saving me, even though I felt like I didn't do much. He was also angry at me for rushing in to save him. I would never hear the end of how proud and disappointed he was in me. The cops gathered up the teens, and the last I heard, they blamed their mental damage on a bad batch of drugs. I didn't know if it was a cover-up job or if they wanted to close the case. I was certain I would never know the truth. I kept my promise and went back to the park to meet the monster that saved us. After a few hours, I didn't think he would show up. When he did, I felt dizzy again looking into the void. I got thinking about how I was able to stand looking into his face and others couldn't. "Hang out?" he asked in his weird voice when he stopped in front of me. I felt my stomach flutter again, glad that he was fine with getting to know each other and forgiving me for my outburst the other night. I decided then that I would look at his face, because I loved him more than I was afraid of him. That worried me. I knew if my feelings ever changed, I might turn out like those teenagers. The faceless man didn't appear to have any kind of malice behind his actions. He was a little bit dangerous just by existing. I was strangely enough perfectly fine with that. He didn't talk much. I started to show him some videos on my phone he appeared to enjoy. It was hard to tell with him. For now, I'm pretty happy with how things are. Just hanging out with the faceless man in the park, until I'm ready to ask him if he wanted to take it further.